Max Stewart was no stranger to alien marketplaces. As a seasoned cargo pilot, he strolled through countless open-air bazaars on foreign planets, where scents of spices, strange creatures, and mystery wafted through thick, heavy air. But this market was different. The planet Solaran had a rustic charm to it, with stalls made from driftwood and metal scraps, and vendors clad in tattered robes, their eyes ever watchful, as if sizing up every potential buyer. Max's gaze flitted between oddities and rare relics, trinkets, and edible slimes, everything a collector or drifter might desire. But what caught Max's attention wasn't a bauble, a delicacy. In a dingy corner half concealed by the stall's frayed canopy, he spotted a small caged creature with a soft purple hue to its fur. It looked strikingly like a Pomeranian, small, fox-like, with a fluffy coat. Only its faint lavender tint and the barely noticeable bioluminescent sparkles in its fur set it apart from Earth dogs. The creature's large, intelligent eyes met Max's gaze, and a pitiful whimper escaped its throat. Max crouched down, peering at the creature more closely. The little thing tilted its head, pressing its body closer to the metal bars. Its eyes held a mix of longing and resignation. Alone for months at a time in his cargo ship, Max knew the feeling all too well. As he looked closer, the dog-like creature pawed gently at the bars, sending a wave of loneliness through him. "What's the story with this one?" Max asked, nodding toward the cage. The merchant, a gray-skinned alien with sharp black eyes, long bony fingers, shifted uncomfortably. "That one, yes, a curious find," he replied, scratching his chin. "Sold to me by a traveler who didn't speak much of its origins, just that it was rare and charming." Max studied the creature again, sensing the merchant's attempt to make it sound exotic. "You don't know where it's from or what it is?" The merchant shrugged. "Not a clue. It was a good deal, so I didn't ask too many questions." He leaned in, a sly smile on his face. "But if you ask me, it's worth more than it looks." Max let out a soft chuckle. Reading between the lines, the merchants didn't know what he had on his hands. Max figured he might have some leverage. "It's cute, I'll give you that. But if you don't even know what it is, that's a lot of unknowns for me to take on." "Ah, yes, but that's where the value lies, in the mystery." The merchant clasped his hands together. "This little creature might be one of a kind." Max rolled his eyes, then took a step back, pretending to lose interest. The merchant quickly caught his meaning, his eyes darting between Max and the creature, and after a bit of back and forth, they finally settled on a price. Though inflated, seemed fair for a pet to stave off the crushing silence of deep space. With the deal struck, Max reached down to the cage, pulling it close to his chest. The little creature wagged its tiny fluffy tail and let out a high-pitched yap, as if thanking him for its chance at freedom. The purple tint of its fur shimmered in the sunlight, and he could feel warmth and contentment radiate from the creature, melting away some of his own loneliness. As he walked back to his ship, he thought about what this little creature meant. It was an impulse buy for sure, but he couldn't deny how something so small had already brought him so much comfort. Once aboard his vessel, the Orion's Venture, he placed the creature on his bunk, watching it as it stretched and sniffed the air. It circled twice before settling into the blanket that Max had laid out for it. He chuckled, shaking his head. "You're just as picky as an Earth dog. Guess I'll call you Neb." The creature's ears perked up, as if acknowledging its new name. "Yeah, Neb. Short for Nebula, since you look like you came from one." As Max prepared the ship for takeoff, he found himself reflecting on Earth and the drastic turn humanity had taken in the last few decades. Humanity had, in its ambition, reached for the stars, only to find they weren't alone. And with that realization came dangers they hadn't prepared for. Greedy empires and intergalactic alliances had taken advantage of Earth's resources, pushing its home planet into a sort of galactic servitude. Earth was now an asset, a provider of resources and labor for far more advanced civilization, powerless to defend itself. Max sighed as the engines hummed to life. Earth's leaders had believed that progress in space technology meant prosperity, an advancement for humankind. Instead, it had meant their submission, and all he could do now was distance himself from the bitterness that came with that knowledge. Looking at Neb, his new companion, he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt for leaving Earth behind. The ship's thrusters roared, lifting them off the planet's surface. Neb curled up on the bunk, barely fazed by the rumbling. As the vessel ascended into the starlit sky, Max looked out the cockpit window, watching Solaran shrink below them. "Guess it's just us now," he said quietly to Neb, feeling the strange comfort of companionship, even if it is from an alien creature. And in the final glance of the stars, he set his course, determined to face whatever lay ahead in the vastness of space, this time with a little more company. The Orion's venture drifted silently through the cold, boundless darkness of space. Max couldn't help but feel the rare warmth in a small, cramped cabin. Neb had settled into his lap, letting out contented little sniffles as Max absently scratched the soft purple fur behind his tiny ears. It was strange how quickly he had grown attached to the little creature, a beacon of companionship in this isolated life as a cargo pilot. They were bound for Tiberius, a sparsely populated planet where Max would be dropping off supplies to one of the few human settlements on the edge of the galactic frontier. The journey would take a few days, a few long, solitary days that had always gnawed at him in the past, but with Neb, the endless expanse of stars outside didn't seem so vast. He continued to pet Neb. A sudden wave of panic surged through him. "Oh man," he said, sitting up abruptly. "I didn't even think about whether you might be hungry or thirsty. I don't even know what to give you." Neb looked up, tilting his head in a curious way that he always did, as though he understood every word. Max glanced around the cabin, trying to piece together a solution. All he had on board was his usual rations, which he wasn't even sure would appeal to the alien creature. Still, it was worth a try. He set out a few of his pre-packed rations in small bowls, some protein cubes, a portion of dehydrated fruit, a bowl of water. "Here you go, little guy," Max said, gesturing for Neb to help himself. "Take your pick." He watched, uncertain, as Neb sniffed around the various offerings, his little nose twitching as he carefully examined each bowl. Then, as if making a decision, Neb began nibbling on the protein cubes with gusto, then moved on to the fruit, and finally took long, grateful laps of the water bowl. "Well, you were hungry," Max chuckled, feeling a wash of relief. "Guess we don't have to worry about you going on a hunger strike." Neb looked up, licking his chops with a satisfied yip, as if to thank Max for the meal. Max gave him an affectionate pat, feeling his earlier anxiety dissolve. The little creature was a survivor. He'd make it just fine. Over the next 3 days, Max and Neb settled into a new routine. They played on the cabin floor with scraps of cloth and small tools that Max would dangle, making Neb pounce and wiggle his tiny purple body like a kitten. At night, Neb would curl up beside Max in his bunk, his warmth a little comfort against the chill of space. The vast, empty ship felt alive again. As they drifted through space, Max found himself talking to Neb more and more, sharing memories of Earth, musing about his cargo runs, and the frustrations about being away from civilization. "Never thought I'd be so glad to have a passenger," he admitted one evening, running a hand through Neb's soft, glowing fur. "Not sure how I got so lucky finding you in that market." Neb would watch him with those wide, intelligent eyes, held tilted in a familiar way that made Max feel as if the little creature understood far more than he let on. On the last night before they reached Tiberius, Max was drifting into a deep sleep when he felt Neb stirring beside him. He kept his eyes shut, but curiosity kept him on high alert as he listened to Neb's tiny paws padding across the floor. Slowly, he opened one eye, careful not to let the little creature see he was awake. Neb trotted over to the pilot's console, and with surprising agility, he leapt up onto the pilot's seat, looking very much at ease, perched in the front of the controls, his head tilted again, this time as he took in the various blinking lights and switches, almost intent on his observations. It was such an odd sight, watching this little creature so focused, studying the console as if it held some deep importance. Max watched in silent fascination. After a few long moments, Neb hopped down from the chair, making his way back over to the bunk where he nestled in beside Max once more, curling up as if nothing had happened. But Max couldn't shake the moment from his mind. Neb wasn't like an ordinary Earth dog. No regular pet would have shown such deliberate curiosity, such understanding of his surroundings. It was as if Neb's mind worked on a different level, and the thought left Max with a strange feeling in his gut. He gave the small creature a gentle pat, still pretending to be asleep, and smiled as Neb settled closer, letting out a contented sigh. As he lay there, Max's thoughts drifted into the mysteries surrounding his new friend. He might be grateful for Neb's companionship, but now he was even more intrigued than ever by what he might yet discover about this little purple companion. For the first time in years of space travel, Max felt a true sense of wonder, an excitement that went beyond the stars outside his window, reaching into the secrets he'd just begun to glimpse in Neb. Max guided Orion's venture onto the landing pad at Tiberius, the rumble of the engines fading as he powered down the systems. Beside him, Neb sat on the co-pilot seat, watching with keen interest, his fluffy purple fur catching glimmers of light from the control panels. Max had to chuckle. The little guy looked like he was ready to take over if Max took a wrong turn. Once docked, he checked the time and realized Aaron would be waiting. The thought made his heart beat just a little faster. Aaron Glasgow was not only the logistics manager for Tiberius, but also someone Max found himself thinking about during those long, empty stretches in space. She always had a ready smile in her casual tomboy style. Loose cargo pants, work boots, and rolled-up sleeves did nothing to hide the fact that she had an undeniably attractive figure. Max took a deep breath, grabbed Neb's leash, and headed out. As they stepped onto the platform, Erin was already there, waiting with her usual cheerful grin. Her blonde hair was tied back, a few strands falling loose around her face, and her eyes lit up the second she saw him. "Max Stewart," she greeted him with a bright smile. "Finally back, huh? You're the highlight of my day, the only pilot who brings in cargo on time and in one piece." He laughed, feeling a warm flush creeping up his neck. "Well, don't give me too much credit. And hey, I brought a little surprise this time," he said, stepping aside to reveal Neb. Erin's eyes widened, and her mouth dropped open. "Oh my God, he's adorable." She crouched down, giving Neb a thorough inspection. "Where'd you find him?" I don't even know what this is." "Looks like a little purple Pomeranian," she said, as she gave Neb a scratch under his chin, and he immediately responded by leaning into her hand, his tail wagging in delight. "He does look like one, doesn't he?" Max chuckled. "I found him in an alien market on Solarin. Guy I bought him from didn't even know where he came from, but I couldn't leave him there in that cage." Aaron straightened, looking impressed. "Well, I'm glad you didn't. He's got spirit. A perfect travel buddy for someone like you, always out there in the middle of nowhere." She flashed him a knowing smile. "Guess he's better than your usual cargo, huh?" "Definitely a lot cuter," Max replied, holding her gaze a little longer than usual. "And doesn't complain about the bumpy rides." They fell into a comfortable banter, the way they always did. Their conversations often meandered toward the state of Earth, its role as a mere resource for stronger empires, and how humans seem to have lost their autonomy in the galaxy. "Sometimes I wonder if we should just have stayed on Earth," Aaron said, her gaze distant for a moment. "Maybe we'd be better off, Out here, it's like we're just guests, hoping that we don't step on the wrong toes." Max nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "Yes, I think about that too. But sometimes I figure it's better to see what's out there, even if it's tough. There's still good people. People like you." Aaron glanced down, the faintest hint of blush on her cheeks. "Thanks, Max." After a few more exchanged smiles, they said their goodbyes, and Max and Neb headed into town to resupply for their next journey. Tiberius's market was bustling, and Max couldn't resist browsing some of the shops. Neb trotted beside him, sniffing everything he passed, seemingly delighted to explore this new place. As they rounded a corner by an electronics shop, Max looked down and realized Neb was no longer at his side. Panic pricked at him. and he scanned the crowd, retracing his steps back to the electronics store. Just as he was about to call out, he spotted Neb inside, his tiny form strolling through the aisles in a way that was far from casual. Neb was looking up, inspecting devices on display, pausing now and then to consider the items as if he was shopping. Max blinked, frozen in surprise. This wasn't idle curiosity. Neb was studying the gadgets with a strange focus. After a moment, Max couldn't resist calling out to him. "Neb, hey buddy, what are you doing in there?" Neb turned and trotted over, his tail wagging as if nothing unusual had happened. Max knelt down to give him a gentle pat on the head, half expecting him to answer. "You're a funny little guy," he said softly. "Why'd you wander off? Shopping for upgrades?" Neb only wagged his tail, his purple fur shimmering, and gave Max a playful nudge. Chuckling, Max clipped on his leash again and continued on their way. But the incident stuck with him, lingering at the edge of his mind, a strange mystery that didn't concern him so much as it intrigued him. They soon found their way to a saloon. The place was rowdy but friendly, a gathering spot for traders, explorers, and occasional local. Max ordered a beer for himself and asked for a bowl of water for Neb, who sat at his feet with a look of satisfaction. Neb pawed at Max's beer, looking up with a pleading expression. Max grinned, emptied the water bowl, and poured in a bit of beer for Neb. Neb eagerly lapped it up, earning a few laughs from nearby patrons. "So that's a unique companion," one of the locals commented, gesturing towards Neb. "What's he called?" "Neb," Max replied, glancing down as Neb happily finished off his beer and settled at his feet. "Picked him up on Solarian. Been good company on the road." They chatted for a while, the conversation drifting between Neb's unusual quality and Max's travel across the galaxy. The locals seemed fascinated by the little creature, especially his purple hue and sparkles. "Seems like he got a mind of his own," one of them remarked. Max could only agree. After a while, Max settled his tab, gave Neb an affectionate pat, and together they made their way back to the landing bay. By the time they reached the ship, Tiberius's twin moons had risen, casting a silver glow over the landscape. As Max climbed into his bunk, Neb curled up beside him, pressing his little body close for warmth. Max chuckled, rubbing the creature's soft ears. "You've been full of surprises, Neb," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. As he lay there in the dim glow of the cabin, Max's thoughts wandered back to the electronics shop. He couldn't shake the image of Neb's deliberate little stroll through the aisles. Was it possible that Neb was more than he seemed? That beneath that cute, fluffy exterior was a mind that understood far more than he ever expected. Smiling, he closed his eyes, wondering what mysteries he might uncover about his unlikely companion next. With Neb snuggled close, Max drifted off to sleep, his mind alive with curiosity and wonder. The Orion's venture was quiet in the early hours, with only a soft hum of the ship's systems filling the air. Max was deep in a dreamless sleep, his breathing even, lost to the world as he recovered from the day's journey. Little did he know, Neb was not beside him in the bunk. Silently, Neb padded down the corridor, his small paws making no sound as he exited the ship. Under the faint glow of Tiberius's moons, he moved like a shadow, slipping unnoticed across the dimly lit landing area and toward the sleeping town. The saloon's neon sign flickered in the distance, the only sign of life amid closed shops, casting a faint glow across the streets. Neb slipped into an alley and made his way to the electronics shop he had visited before. A quick glance confirmed that the back door was slightly ajar. Neb entered, his eyes adjusting quickly to the darkness inside. He moved through the aisles with quiet precision, his small form easily navigating the shelves. This time he seemed to know exactly what he was looking for. He selected a handful of components, transmitters, receivers, and a few power sources. He carefully placed them into a bag he'd found on the shop floor. His movements were methodical and efficient. With one last look around, he padded out, the bag clutched in his teeth. Back on the Orion's venture, Neb quietly opened the hatch and re-entered the ship. This time, the faint noise stirred Max from sleep. He sat up blinking as Neb entered the cabin with the small bag hanging from his mouth. For a moment, Neb tried his usual tactic. A friendly wag of the tail and a wide-eyed look, as if this was all a harmless game. But Max wasn't buying it. He sat up, crossing his arms, his expression a mix of hurt and curiosity. "Neb," he said, his voice low, "I know you're up to something. I'm not sure how or why, but I know there's more than you than what you're letting on. I thought we were close." At the mention of betrayal, something shifted in Neb's gaze. He stopped wagging his tail and set the bag down, his eyes meeting Max's with an intensity that was new. Then, to Max's utter astonishment, Neb spoke. "I didn't mean to deceive you, Max." His voice was calm, intelligent, and laced with a strange, almost musical quality. "There is so much about me you don't know, but I will tell you everything. My name is Nebiani of Ceylon, a planet far from here. I am the son of our emperor, and I was captured by our mortal enemy, the Kortaks, brought to the system as a prisoner." Max sat frozen, his mouth slightly open. "Captured as a prisoner?" Neb nodded. "The Kortaks have been waging war on my people for generations. We have the technology to defend ourselves, but our bodies, we aren't built for combat the way humans are. They seized me on a diplomatic mission, and I managed to escape on a cargo vessel, much like yours. But the crew found me, and I was treated as little more than a stowaway. Eventually, the merchant in charge saw me as nothing more than an oddity to be sold. That's how I ended up on Solaren, where you found me." Max's mind was spinning with a pang of hurt and lingered beneath his astonishment. He'd believed that Neb was a simple, loyal companion, a quirky pet. Yet here he was, listening to a story about alien empires and intergalactic wars. "So everything you've done since then, keeping this from me, you were just hiding who you were?" Neb lowered his head. "Not exactly. I came to trust you, Max. In all honesty, I didn't want to burden you with the truth, and I couldn't risk getting your hopes up if my idea failed." "Your idea?" Max echoed, trying to piece together what Neb was saying. Neb nodded, a glint of purpose in his eyes. "My people are losing the war. We've advanced our technology at a rapid pace, but our physical evolution hasn't kept up. We rely on telekinesis, a skill that allows us to interact with objects and technology. But in battle, our physical limitations are a weakness that the Kortaks exploit." Neb's voice softened as he continued. "I believe Earth can change that balance. Humanity's natural resilience, your combat skills, could be the edge we need. In exchange, my people would share our advanced technology that would allow Earth to defend itself from hostile forces already exploiting it." Max's head was reeling as he took it all in. "So you're suggesting that humans join your people in a fight against the Kortaks?" "Yes," Neb replied. "It would be mutually beneficial. Your people have the strength, and we have the technology. Together we could form an alliance that would protect both our planets, secure a place for Earth among respected allies in the galaxy. That's why I needed the equipment from the shop. I need to amplify your ship's communications array to reach my father, to propose this alliance." For a moment, Max was silent, absorbing everything Neb had said. The implications were staggering. An interplanetary alliance that could save Earth from being a mere resource? It sounded almost too good to be true. And yet, looking at Neb, Max couldn't deny the sincerity in his companion's eyes. Neb's ears lowered slightly, and his voice softened. "I'm sorry for hiding this from you. Max, I wasn't sure if my father would even consider the idea, and I didn't want to risk disappointing you. But you've shown me such kindness, friendship, and for that I owe you the truth." Max took a deep breath, his emotions a mix of awe and betrayal, a strange new sense of hope. He looked at Neb, understanding. "Well," he said finally, "you're one surprising little guy, that's for sure." Neb's tail gave a tentative wag, and Max couldn't help but smile. "All right," he said, a sense of determination rising in him. "If this alliance could really change things on Earth, then I'll help you. Once we're en route to the next destination, we'll set up the equipment and see if we can get in touch with your father." Neb's tail wagged fully now, his eyes bright with gratitude. "Thank you, Max. I know I put you in a difficult position, but together, I believe we can change the course of both our worlds." Max chuckled, reaching down to ruffle Neb's fur. Well, looks like I got more than just a cute sidekick on board, huh? You're practically royalty. Neb grinned, his telekinetic energy giving his eyes an odd shimmer. Just another crew member, if you ask me. As they settled in for the night, Max couldn't shake the sense that his life had taken a monumental turn. Neb's offer was risky as it was tempting, and he felt a rush of anticipation that he hadn't known in years. With new orders coming in for their next destination, he knew their path was set. He lay down, Neb curling beside him. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Max felt that he had a purpose beyond the next cargo drop. As sleep took him, his thoughts turned to Earth and the possibilities that lay ahead. The next morning, light spilled through the cabin, casting a soft glow over the consoles as Max and Neb prepared for their departure. They were headed to a mining colony on Almaris 9, a remote rocky moon in the Zavon system. Famous for its deposits of xanarite, a mineral prized for its energy-dense properties. Once they load up on the xanarite, they'd be en route to deliver it to a manufacturing plant on Iceris Prime. Neb sat on the co-pilot seat, his tail wagging with anticipation. Max, still adjusting to his companion's newfound identity, looked at Neb with a mix of curiosity and respect. "You ready for our project, Your Highness?" Max asked, grinning. Neb scoffed and tilted his head, feigning insult. "Neb will do just fine, thanks. Now let's see if you're as handy as you say, Max." They launched smoothly, leaving Tiberius behind, and the stars stretched out in a dazzling array around them. Once they were in the void of deep space, Neb pulled out the components he'd borrowed from the electronics shop. His plan to enhance the ship's communication system was ambitious, and Max was eager to see just how much this little furball really knew. Neb nudged a small data pad towards Max. "First things first, we'll need to access the main communications ray and attach this frequency modulator there," he instructed, gesturing with his paw. Max picked up the modulator and opened up the relay panel. "All right, teach," he said, amused. "Just tell me what to do." As Max worked, Neb continued giving instructions, his tone confident yet warm. They fell into an easy rhythm, with Neb explaining and Max asking questions. "So back on your planet, you use these neural links, huh?" Max asked as he carefully screwed in the modulator. "That must make everything easier, having a direct line to the systems." Neb nodded. "Yes, Neuralinks are a critical part of our fleet's infrastructure. They allow pilots to merge their minds with the ships, responding to commands nearly instantly. The Kortaks have a similar system, though rudimentary. They rely on physical implants. Our neural interfaces are non-invasive and dissolve after use. One reason the Kortaks captured me was to try and decipher how we build them." Max whistled, impressed. "Sounds advanced. Guess humans still have some catching up to do." Neb gave a small smile. "Well, you're not as far behind as you think. Besides, that's why we've adapted AI to help us manage most infrastructure. Our robotics handle nearly every physical task, construction, repairs, even defensive maintenance. It frees up our citizens to focus on learning, strategy, and research." Max's hand slowed, his brow furrowed in thought. "But the AI, they're still under your control, right? No risk of them taking over?" "Of course," Neb said, a note of amusement in his voice. "We designed them with safeguards. They follow programmed ethics that align with our culture's values. But I can see why you'd be wary. AI, like any tool, has to be carefully managed." The banter made Max realize just how knowledgeable Neb was. His new friend was not only intelligent but insightful, and Max found himself impressed with Neb's understanding of both technology and people. Finally, the modifications were done. Max sealed the panel and they stood back, admiring their work. "Think this'll work?" Max asked. Neb's eyes glimmered with excitement. "Let's find out." They activated the console, and Neb input a complex sequence of commands, setting up an encrypted signal. Soon, a faint hum indicated that they were broadcasting on a frequency meant to reach Neb's home planet. After a tense few moments, the screen flickered, and a face appeared, a regal figure with Neb's same purple tint, though the eyes were much older and wiser. "Nebaani?" The figure's voice was deep, carrying authority and concern. You're alive." Neb lowered his head respectfully. Father, I escaped the Kortaks, and I'm with a new friend, Max Stewart, a human from a planet called Earth. He and his people are resourceful, strong. I believe an alliance with Earth could help us win the war. Together, we'd be more than a match for the Kortaks. The Emperor's gaze shifted to Max, studying him. Humans, you say? I'm glad to see you alive, my son, and I trust your judgment. But Earth, are they ready for such an alliance? Max took a deep breath. Your Majesty, humans have endured a lot. We've been exploited by other species for resources and labor. But I think if they understood the potential of a true partnership, they'd join you. I just don't know if I can trust everyone back home to put Earth's best interests first. The Emperor's face softened. Your concerns are valid, Max. Power corrupts many species, and I've seen alliances crumble over greed and personal gain. Max nodded. That's exactly the problem. I know a man on Earth's council, Counselor Chambers. He's been speaking out against our exploitation, and he fought to resist the initial invasions. If anyone could be trusted to present this alliance fairly, it would be him. But getting to him might be tricky. Neb looked at Max, an unspoken question in his eyes. So you'll go to Earth? Max thought for a moment. Yes, it's risky, but if we're going to make this alliance work, we need someone who will see the bigger picture. If Chambers agrees to listen, we might have a real shot at changing Earth's future. Neb's father nodded thoughtfully. Very well, Max Stewart. You have my cautious approval. Nebiani, my son, stay close to this human. I sense he may be an ally we've been waiting for. Keep me informed. The screen dimmed and the connection closed, leaving Max and Neb in a charged silence. They looked at each other, shared understanding passing between them. Max gave a half smile. Guess we're going home. The rest of the journey to Almaris 9 passed quickly. They docked at the mining colony, loading up valuable xanarite with the help of the colony's loaders. The massive metal crates shimmered faintly, the mineral's energy potential barely contained. After exchanging pleasantries with the crew and completing the paperwork, Max received the coordinates for their next destination. But instead of heading to Iceris Prime, he adjusted the course for Earth. Neb, sensing Max's resolve, settled beside him in the cockpit. They shared a moment of quiet, both of them staring at the stars stretchingly endless before them. Neb broke the silence. You really think Counselor Chambers will help? Max shrugged. I hope so. Chambers is one of the few who remembers what Earth could be if we had the strength to stand up for ourselves. He's the kind of man who could turn this alliance into something real. And if he does, Neb, I think we might actually have a shot at taking our place in the galaxy. Neb's eyes softened, his gaze fixed on Max. Thank you, Max. You're risking a lot for my people. Max gave a wry smile. Well, I'm not exactly doing this out of the goodness of my heart. I've got a planet to save too. With that, he engaged the warp drive, and the stars streaked around them as they hurtled toward Earth, a new sense of purpose propelling them forward.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe and visit the channel for more interesting sci-fi stories and content.